Life would be pretty lame if one didn't have at least some form of variation available. With outgoing extroverts, this shouldn't be much of an issue. But with shy introverts, this can be seen as a bit more challenging. But this can be dealt with by simply engaging in a slightly different activity, such as playing a video game instead of just watching TV. Either way, they have engaged in variety, and this perspective can be seen with tabletop games that people engage in, especially those with a long history to them. Compounding the situation, a given variant of the game can possess their own variations to it as well. To paraphrase what an ogre with a Scottish accent once said, games can be like onions, they have layers to them. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming, Chess. With this episode, we will be going over the variants of Chaturaji. With Chaturaji, it comes in a variety of different variants that people are able to play, especially with the fact that the rules for the game weren't written down until relatively recently within the game's history. With that said, we'll be looking at just a few variants here. And if people are interested in playing a different version of the game than what is found in this episode, or the given episodes for this given unit of the series, they should be allowed to do so. This is because we think that players should be allowed to use variants that are best suited for them. As addressed in the previous episode, players are able to play Chaturaji in teams. In addition to the rules that have already been addressed in the previous episode, there are some additional rules that are to be implemented during the game when playing this given variant. If a team sees one of their partners move their king into the throne square of an opposing player, said team is to score 1 point. With that of a throne square, it is the square that saw the king begin the game. A king has to start somewhere, so why not upon their throne, regardless of how they manage to obtain said throne? And a team is to score 2 points if one of their partners manages to capture an opposing king that is still found upon their given throne square. Seems like the Praetorian Guards didn't do their job in protecting their boss. That, or they were either bribed or turned against their ruler, which was a legitimate threat during the Roman Empire, thus proving that if you don't want your bodyguards to turn against you, don't be an asshole when in power, even if doing so is very hard for said person to do. If a player manages to move their king into the throne square of their partner, then said player will take command of their allies' pieces. This can be seen as the royal families of Europe banding together in a common interest, during the Reign of Terror in France during the late 18th century, which represented a great socio-cultural threat to their power and authority. With a player taking control of their allies' army, they can be seen as the commander. And though the player of the controlled army gets to roll the die, the commander will decide which piece is to be moved. And this piece can be from either army, thus giving them greater options when it comes to that of moving the pieces. And if the king of one partner is captured during the game, then the allied player is to take control of their partner's army. The king is dead. Long live the king. And if this is an issue, then the player who lost their king never should have allowed their king to be captured in the first place. If a player finds themselves in a situation where they are commanding their allies' army and have captured both kings of the opposing team, then said player has created an empire, not unlike that of Alexander of Macedon. But it's one thing to actually create an empire, and it's another thing to be able to rule it and to have a proper administration set up to govern it after one's death, something that Alex actually never set up, allowing his empire to fracture upon his death. With the team that created an empire, they will earn 1 point for actually creating the empire, 2 points if the player created the empire and captured the last standing king, although we're not sure if this is in reference to their own army or in general, and 4 points if said player captures the last standing enemy king while said king was found upon their throne square. Must be pretty crappy to go out while sitting on one's throne, but it could be worse. Said king could have gone out while on the toilet. Talk about a royal flush. If a team loses one of their kings followed by capturing a king from the opposing team, then the capturing team can engage in a king exchange. If the opposing team agree to this exchange, then both kings are to be placed back onto the board. When placed back onto the board, they're to be placed upon their respective throne. But if said throne is already occupied by another piece, like what Napoleon Bonaparte did after taking control of France, then the king is to be placed onto a square found as close to the throne as possible. But if this exchange proposal is rejected, then this exchange is not to occur, and this king exchange can only occur after a king has been captured. When it comes to that of a ship triumph, the player is to capture the 2 enemy ships followed by taking command of their ally's ship. Almost sounds like a player has press-ganged their ally's ship to serve their military instead of their ally. And if one player has lost all of their pieces, then their ally is to continue playing the game alone until the game comes to an end. If a player experiences a situation where they have lost all of their pieces except for their king, then said player is allowed to end their participation in the game with no one earning points for this given king. I mean, how can one score points if the means of scoring or otherwise earning said points is no longer available to achieve? And when playing in teams, the objective of the game is allowed to be changed from that of scoring the most points to that of being the last team standing, thus capturing every piece of the opposing team. This can be done even if it's a Pyrrhic victory. The game is over, so it doesn't really matter if one's army was completely decimated. It's not like the opposing players can create a new army and take advantage of the situation. For those who want some variety in their game, they can implement one or both of the following rules. First is to divide the pieces into two categories: weak pieces and strong pieces. With the weak pieces, they consist of the pawns and ships and are only capable of capturing other weak pieces. With the strong pieces, they consist of the horses, elephants, and kings, and are capable of capturing both strong and weak pieces. For us, this makes sense, since pieces are only able to capture pieces that are of equal or lesser value than themselves and aren't allowed to punch above their weight class. Second is to allow players to roll 2 dice instead of 1. From there, after rolling both dice, they get to perform 2 moves on their turn as indicated by the dice rolls. And for those who wish to play the game without the use of dice, they are allowed to do so, which will make the game rely more upon strategy instead of heavily relying upon that of luck, regardless of it's a lady or not. Despite us presenting this game as being primarily that of a point-scoring game with total domination being limited to that of team play, players should be allowed to play the game that sees total domination in non-team games and the scoring of points being done as the objective of the game when playing in teams. Another variant to the game is to have the players agree upon the rule that if a player has their king captured while having their other pieces still upon the board, these other pieces are considered frozen, thus unable to be moved for the rest of the game. So with that said, that is what you need to know about the variants of Chaturaji. With that taken care of, we can start talking about Chaturaji. If you liked this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.